Good morning. Today is March 11th, 2008. My name is Jeff Gibb and I'm a volunteer here at the Palm Springs Air Museum in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library and Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in these conflicts. Today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Royal Canadian Flying Officer Ken Wright. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Nice to have you here, Ken.
Thank you. Good to be here.
If you could start off, please, sir, by stating your full name and spell it for me, please.
Full name is Ken Wright, K-E-N, W-R-I-G-H-T.
And where were you born, Ken?
England.
What part of England?
Up in County of Durham.
Okay.
Northeast England.
And what was your parents' names?
Parents' names, Gertrude and Theodore Leslie Wright was my dad.
And do you know how they met?
They met during World War I somehow or other.
Okay. Were they both from that area too?
Yes. Englishmen don't move too much.
Pardon me for this camera jiggling. It was a little loose there. So tell me about the area where you grew up.
Well, I don't know much about the area I was born in because, as I say, I was 5 years old when we left there. My dad was a coal miner.
Okay.
He was in the pits. And I don't know, they got fed up with England, I guess, and what was going on. They decided to pack up all 4 kids and head out to Canada.
Okay.
He'd heard about the coal mines on Vancouver Island, and he just headed out for the coal mines of Vancouver Island. And I think the government was helping veterans. He was a World War I veteran, of course, and I think they were helping them move out.
And you were 5 years old at this time?
5 years old, yeah.
Do you remember much about the journey?
No, I know we were on the train a heck of a long time, and it was cold. 1928-29 winter. And we landed in Nanaimo. And that was the start. I'm still in Nanaimo.
Okay. Now you said you had 4 siblings or 4 children in the family. How old were you, or were you the oldest, youngest? Where did you fall in the pecking order?
About the middle. We had 1 sister and 3 boys. She was the eldest, and they're all gone now. And my youngest brother, he just passed away a couple of months ago, so I'm still here.
Okay. So what kind of neighborhood did you grow up in Vancouver Island?
It was, I guess, a normal small town. I don't know if it'd be 10,000 people at that time.
Okay. And do you remember much about it? Was there a lot of fun things to do?
Oh, yes. There was hardly any radios even at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And we grew up outdoors, having lots of fun outside, and just generally, we weren't barefoot. We always had shoes, that sort of thing, but mining didn't pay off too great, and we had a pretty bare existence, I guess.
Okay. Did you have jobs while you were growing up?
I caddied. I was always interested in golf, and I started caddying in the late 30s, I guess, and that was fun, and pretty poor pay, though. 25 cents for 9 holes. The going rate.
In a short season, too.
If you caddied all day, you got a whole $1.
Do you remember what the Depression was like? At that time, did our country's Depression affect you in Canada?
I always say that we were so poor we didn't realize there was a depression on. You're right.
What kind of religious background were you raised in?
Church of England background, but I'm afraid I missed a lot of Sunday schools.
Okay.
On purpose.
Do you remember the names of the schools and churches you attended?
Oh, I started out in a little square schoolhouse in South Nanaimo. I don't know if it had a name or not. And then did most of my schooling in a school in the district where we lived, which was Harewood, a well-known district in Nanaimo. And then ended up in a city school and finished my education there.
Okay. Did you play sports in school?
Oh yes, I played everything that was going on: basketball, baseball, soccer.
What was your favorite?
I guess basketball would have to be my favorite, I think.
Okay. Do you remember if you had any favorite subjects or least favorite subjects?
No, I did pretty well in school. Math and all that sort of thing came pretty good to me. I got pretty good marks, and that helped. The trouble is I left school too early. I left to make $1 a day, help the family out.
Okay.
And after grade 11, I didn't go back, so went to get in the Air Force, and I had to do some work.
Some quick study up.
Well, they set up, the Air Force set up schools in Vancouver for people like myself, and they called it pre-enlistment school, and they paid us subsistence to go over there, and instead of algebra and mathematics, they gave us, the subjects that would be used in the Air Force, like navigation, and that gave us a terrific start, and as soon as we were finished, we were into the Air Force.
Excellent. Did you have any girlfriends and a lot of friends in Nanaimo?
I had a lot of friends, but not girlfriends so much. I was too busy playing golf then.
And so you left high school in the 11th grade. What year would that have been? Do you remember?
Oh boy. It was somewhere around 1939, I guess.
So when did you start getting your interest in aviation?
I've got a book, Jeff, that I made in school and says, "What is your ambition?" And I started this book, and my folks used to get newspapers from England, lots of pictures of airplanes and the RAF, and that got me fired up a little bit. And I still have the booklet with the cutouts of big bombers like the Avro Anson staggering around, and various aircraft like that. I cut them out and put them in this book, and I can still see it. My ambition is to be in the RAF. I didn't know there was an RCAF. And as I say, I still have that book. So.
And how old do you think you were when that interest first started?
Oh, about 10, I guess.
Okay. So it was a long life
Oh, yes.
thing. So do you remember your first airplane ride?
Yes, I was sicker than a dog.
How old were you at that time?
I was in the Air Force before I got an airplane.
Okay.
Ride.
Wow.
No airplanes came to Nanaimo. I was in Saskatoon studying in the Air Force, and they were giving rides during the air tests in the evening. And this instructor took a student up, and he did all of the sequences that you can take under the hood and that. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm thinking, this is flying upside down, sideways, and everything else. Just as it come into land, of course, is when it hit you, barf, I let it all go. That's the one and only time I was ever sick. But I think the instructor got ticked off about taking a person up on his first ride, doing something like that.
So you pretty much left high school and went right into the Air Force, or did you have a time period in between?
Time period in between, I was back to the golf course. I became the one and only greenskeeper for Nanaimo Golf Course.
Okay.
And that was for a couple of years, and then I went in the Air Force from there.
So you were approximately 19 when you went into the Air Force?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you were doing on December 7th, 1941?
I was playing golf.
Okay. Do you remember what you think about it? How'd you hear about it? What was your reaction?
We figured, here we go. It's going to be a big one. And it was a bit of a shock.
Okay.
It really was. And then to see pictures of it afterwards, it was a terrible waste, and it was terrible, no doubt about it.
Now, this was prior to you joining the Canadian Air Force.
Yes.
So how long after December 7th, 1941 was it that you joined up with the Canadian Air Force?
Yeah, I got in the Air Force in early 42.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the spring of 42.
So what was the steps for you to join the Air Force?
Well, as I say, after I finished this pre-enlistment course, they sent us right off to Edmonton to get training there. That was, the basics, marching.
How long was your basic training?
Oh, 2 or 3 months, I guess.
Okay.
And then from there, went on to Saskatoon in Saskatchewan for the initial training, which is getting down to the subjects of math and aerodynamics, all that sort of thing.
Okay, going back to your basic training, was it a pretty shock to your system to go into the basic training where the drill instructors yell and scream at you?
Oh, you expect it really, but it was so darn hot then. It was coming up spring, and I was a coast boy,
Mm-hmm.
and getting back there in the prairies, as we call it, it was quite a shock to try and put up with that heat.
Were you pretty much physically in shape, or was it that something?
I was always slim.
Okay.
I must have been a great 135 pounds or so, and that. And those serge uniforms that they issue with it first are pretty warm and rough.
So they got you up early and ran you hard all day, and
We didn't have it quite that bad. What was happening then, the Americans were ferrying aircraft up to Alaska, if you remember,
right.
and onward to Russia. And I was asked, they asked if I could drive. Well, I could drive. And so they gave me a Jeep, and we went out to the Edmonton airport as a sort of an honor guard. 6 or 8 of us went out there, and here we saw our first B-17s, B-24s, P-39 Air Cobras, I remember. They were landing there, and we had to guard them
Mm-hmm.
out there. The mosquitoes were doing a good job of guarding them, but we went out there and fought the mosquitoes, and that opened the hood of a Air Cobra once. It wasn't. I opened it and sat inside to get out of it all. So I was sitting in the seat of an Air Cobra then, and that just fired me up some more.
So then you went on to your next phase of training, and where'd you go for that?
Next phase was elementary flying school in southern Saskatchewan,
Okay.
and we had they opened the hangar doors, looked in there, and I thought, boy, we're on fighters right away. Fairchild Cornells, low wing, beautiful looking ship, and it couldn't have been a nicer shock than to walk in that hangar and see what we're going to fly.
And how long did this school go on?
That goes on for 2-3 months.
Okay, and so probably in how long were you into that school before you took your first flight?
Oh, we started pretty well the first week or so.
Okay.
And of course, by then it was winter, and all they did was they don't take the snow off the runways. They just start rolling the snow. So you flew off snow, and one thing about it, you were always into wind when you took off or landed. They just moved along with it.
Right, right. So can you describe the first feelings on the first takeoff that you did with the instructor?
Oh, it was just great. It was just great, particularly the first solo. I just had to grin this wide, and I felt like I'd done it before, and it just came easy to me. That's all.
Uh-huh.
And enjoy it. Oh man.
So this was a tandem seat trainer plane.
Yeah,
Okay.
very aerobatic. We had to do loops, rolls, spins, the whole works right in the first week you start flying.
Now, at this point, did you have any clue you were going into bombers, or had they separated that out yet?
No, they wait till the end of the course for that.
Okay, and at this course is where that was determined?
Well, no, the next course. We
Okay.
went on to Cessna Cranes up at Yorkton again in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Cessna Cranes for twin engine training, and that was another beautiful aircraft to fly. Quite simple,
Mm-hmm.
and I just feel like I breezed through that. I just enjoyed it all,
Okay.
cold and all.
Very cold, I imagine.
And at the end of that course, you're seated up in front of the CO and his staff there, and I can just remember him saying, "Are you sure if we send you to an advanced flying school or an operational school that you're not going to change your mind about this flying?" I said, "No, sir." I can remember, "No, sir, I want to fly." And so I got one of the best postings I could get.
Okay.
2 of us were sent direct to an operational training unit.
And where was that located at?
That was on the east coast of Canada now at Penfield Ridge, New Brunswick.
Now, had they given you a chance for a liberty at this point, or had you?
Oh yes, just about after every school there was 2 weeks or so of leave, as we called it.
Okay.
And I'd go, and you got passes on the railway to go home for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you were sent to this East Coast training school. Can you pick up and carry on with that? What that was like?
Well, it was quite a shock because, we're flying, say, 200 horses, engines, in whatever it was, something like that, in the Cessnas, and we saw these big brutes, the Lockheed Venturas, R2800 engines. I remember that, 2,000 horse engines, and they were pretty tricky to handle. And of course they were tail draggers, so that on takeoff was the big thing to not try and ground loop, try
Right.
to keep her straight, and you had to be so tender with those throttles. After a while, it was just normal that you pushed one throttle ahead of the other to keep it straight on the runway.
So were you flying with a pilot, co-pilot at this time, or did you still have a training pilot in there?
We never had co-pilots in our Air Force.
Okay.
Even in operations, we didn't have co-pilots. And instructors stayed with us for a while, and they were pretty brutal ships to handle. So I say, even taxiing them, left hand on the brake, and your other hand on the throttle. You had to select the brake, and then use the toes and all that. And your head's below the cockpit once you're taxiing almost.
Mercy sakes.
And they were, I say they were beautiful airliners, but they didn't make a very good bomber.
Okay.
Well, the load wasn't as big. They were fast, not.
So how long were you in these Venturas?
About 2-3 months
Okay.
during the summer. Once we got a Maribor, that, of course, then we had to start a formation flying, and that was something else. They were so heavy to handle. It was pretty tough to fly formation with them. No power controls, of course. When the aircraft is sitting still, you can't pull the yoke back into your lap. It's just so heavy.
Right.
You've got to have the engines running and have them pull back into you.
Okay.
But we survived that one. And overseas, of course, they were flying these Venturas in the Tactical Air Force. That's where we're supposed to be heading.
So you were destined to be a Ventura pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
So then you finished
Crewed
this.
up.
You finished this school at this point in what, another 6-8 weeks at this point?
We got another month's leave now to travel right across Canada, have time at home on train, and then all the way back to Halifax to go overseas.
Okay.
But I got to add, it was kind of nice at Penfield Ridge to get crewed up, as they say. You pick out a navigator and a wireless air gunner, and then a straight air gunner. There was your crew of 4.
Okay.
No, they didn't give us co-pilots at all.
Okay.
And so we got crewed up, and we were very friendly. Everything happened good. Except my gunner, they wouldn't let him go overseas. They found he'd been cheating. He was blind in one eye.
Ah.
He did the old deal like this, you know, what he's doing. So he didn't make it. I got a new gunner overseas.
So did you fly overseas, or were you sent over on troop
No.
carriers?
Nice trip. Sent us down to New York to go over on the Queen Mary. A bunch of Air Force fellas and myself, and 16,000 of your troops went over on the Queen Mary. And one of the dandiest storms I ever saw out there in the Atlantic. Man, it was something.
Everybody was sick, I bet.
A lot of people were sick. I don't know why I didn't get sick, and they asked for volunteers to go out and submarine watch out on the Flying Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered. I thought, well, it's better than being down here. The smell was getting pretty rough. And that trip out on past the sides of the boat, you're hanging right out there and looking back at the ship. And the water was up there, and then the water was down here, you know. It was, as I say, that was the thrill of my life. It wasn't in flying. It was on the Queen Mary.
Okay, so where did you arrive overseas? What was your port of entry?
Greenwich, Scotland.
Okay.
Is where it came. And they put us on trains right away, ran us down to the south of England, Bournemouth,
Okay.
which was the receiving center for Canadian personnel. And from there, they started posting us to different jobs around the country.
Okay. And, okay, so where were you sent from there?
From there, once again, I was fortunate. I went to, I think, what they call an advanced flying unit, flying the British Oxfords. First time I got a hold of a British plane. And they were simple, something like the Cessna Crane that we trained with in Canada. And that was to get familiar with the map reading in England, and that, which was really something. England was just a bunch of airfields, one after the other, and you get in the circuit of one airfield, and you're in the wrong circuit. You got to move over. You might even land there, and then find out you're in the wrong one, and have to go back to the other one.
Mercy.
So it was great fun. That was.
So how long were you in these planes training?
Not very long. This is during the winter, I guess, of 43.
Okay.
Early 44, they sent me to a conversion unit. We're supposed to go there where we'll meet our crew again and get ready to go on operations. We get there to find that no more Venturas. We got B-25 Mitchells.
Okay.
And were we ever happy? We got nose wheels on them instead of tail draggers, for one thing. But the operation of them, it had less horsepower, was faster, and carried twice the load.
So by this time, you've already been in the Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, for over a year then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So where were you sent to once you received your Mitchell bombers?
The actual, after I got through the conversion unit there, as we called it, down to one of the nicest places in England, near London, in Surrey. And the airfield was Dunsfold, and which is the site of the British Aerospace, owns Dunsfold now. They apparently designed the Harrier jump jet there and various other models of British Aerospace.
So tell me how you felt the first time you sat in the seat of a B-25 and the first time you flew it.
Oh, geez, just great. A relief to be able to sit normally and have normal brakes, but to get the nose wheel, that I think was what we all. I've seen some writers say that, we had to convert onto those nose wheels. That was the greatest thing that ever happened to airplanes, is to get rid of the tail dragger.
So at this point, you still have your original crew except for the gunner.
That's right.
And what were their names? Do you remember?
Oh, my observer, who was the navigator bomber, was Hank. Henry Hank. That's about it. And then I had a Stu. And my God, Stu was a wireless air gunner. And I had a misadventure with a new air gunner they gave me. I'd heard about LMF, which is lack of moral fiber in the RAF.
Right.
I had one of those. He didn't turn up for a trip, and we did an operation without him. Second time, I said, this is bad. I think I've got one of those. Unfortunately, I had to wheel him into the flight commander, and he was out of the station that day.
Okay,
so they gave me another one.
So how many hours up at this point in training flights do you think you'd had?
Oh, I don't think by then we'd have 200, 250 hours or so.
Okay.
And we got, in that training, there was a lot of instrument flying. We were fully instrument rated by the time we got finished at the conversion unit.
So how many hours in the B-25 at the conversion unit before they put you direct into operations?
40 or 50 hours, I'd say.
Okay. And do you think you pretty well mastered the command of the Mitchell bomber?
Well, I guess I did everything I was supposed to do, and I loved the airplane.
Was it a lot easier to fly in formations?
Oh yes, it was lighter on the controls, which when you fly in formation, I used to feel sorry for your heavy boys that flew for 8 and 10 hours. Mind you, they opened up. We tried to fly tight formations, shorter trips.
So you arrive in your first operations unit. How long were you there before you took your first maiden battle flight?
Oh, about a week maybe.
About a week?
Just to get used to the place. And being Tactical Air Force, they was a lovely station with permanent buildings on it and that, but they rigged tents up for us. And we were given portable bathtubs and portable cots, folding cots.
Now, were you under pretty much direct Canadian Air Force command, or was RAF in command?
It was RAF from there on. Actually, it was RAF at Penfield Ridge. They gave Penfield Ridge to the RAF to set up their own operational training unit. And the staff, of course, was everything. Dutch, British, Australian, Canadians, everybody. That's how the RAF got to be. Our squadron was a mixture of all different countries.
Okay. Okay. Tell me about your first battle flight.
Well, the first flight, the first few flights, I guess, were fairly straightforward. I don't remember any great problems. Food formation, all right. We got them done.
Do you remember where the targets were?
Nope. I could tell you.
Okay. Were they typically long flights, or were they shorter
No.
flights?
That's how I managed to get 50 trips in. The flights that we did were mostly into France, Belgium, things like that. Ventura. And an hour and a half, 2.5 hours or so. I think the longest flight we did was down to Orleans. We bombed a ammunition dump or something down in Orleans. Yeah, it started April the 4th.
1944?
In 44, right. Just a good time to get in. Oh, and then we did a bunch of training before we really got going again. So here I'm 26 before I did my own. Operation number 1. Mantes Gassecourt, northwest of Paris. Light flak and no fighters. And only went from them. Nantes, the Pas-de-Calais area. One of our favorite targets was what they call no-ball targets. Of course, these turned out to be the buzz bombs.
Okay.
Sites. We were bombing in innocent-looking clumps of trees and things like that. You didn't know what you were bombing because they were pretty well hidden.
Do you remember what altitudes you normally flew these missions at?
10, 12,000.
10, 12,000.
Yeah.
Do you remember a lot of flak, or some trips more so than others?
Yes, that's. We lost a few to fighters, but we never saw the fighters. We were so low, the fighters went down. They'd hit a couple maybe and just keep going straight down. That was their system.
Mm-hmm.
But the flak, yes, we saw lots, particularly after D-Day. I can remember Caen, where they got the Germans holed up around there, and they had flak like you wouldn't believe. There were actually clouds of black smoke before we got there. And
did your plane ever take any hits from flak?
Just light. I have a piece of flak at home that we pulled out of the airplane. Didn't do any damage really. No, never lost an engine. Never lost anything.
The B-25 was a pretty rugged plane, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. They took quite a beating. Yeah.
Did you participate in the D-Day invasion?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that day?
Well,
Or actually, if you don't mind, maybe start like the day before and kind of lead into it. How much did they tell you in advance, or did you have a gut instinct of what was building? Or
yes, when they told us we were going to do a bit of night flying formation, well, weren't too happy about that. And after a few nights of that, they just canceled it. As most of us said, how can you tell the distance of you had a navigation light to fly by? And I don't know if anybody can, but try to find or tell the distance of a light at night. You can't tell how far away it is.
mm-hmm.
You don't know if it's a big light far away or a small light close up or whatever. So after having a few accidents, they canceled that business. And come June the 5th, what we call the battle order came out. That's the sheet with all the crews and all the names on them there. We're going out at night. And that was a shock to us. We figured, yes, something is definitely up now. We were sent to bomb somewhere near, I got her here.
Did they paint your planes in the Normandy colors?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember walking out and seeing that? Did you know they were going to do it?
We knew there was something on then. June the 5th. We bombed a railroad and a road junction at Falaise. No opposition from the 21st Panzer Division we got there. It was a quiet trip.
Can you spell Falaise for us in case somebody wants to look it up on the map?
Falaise.
Okay. So you walked out, and here's your planes painted with these black and white stripes.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it was some sort of identification, which is what it was.
So what time did you take off?
It was quite late. I think it went on. That's on June the 5th. This is why D-Day is June the 5th and June the 6th. It was the night of that, and we didn't make a note of times. I couldn't really tell you.
Okay. How many ships were your normal flight?
A squadron had 12 machines, and 2 flights, A and B flight, 6 ships each. They
Okay.
had more than that, but that's what you flew as.
Okay. So your normal bombing missions, it was just the 12? Or did you gather up with other groups?
Other groups, 98 I was in 180 Squadron, RAF, 98 Squadron was there, and the Dutch Squadron 320 was on the same field.
Okay.
We tented with the Dutch fellas too.
Okay.
98 Squadron was on the other side of the field.
Well, on your raid on June the 5th in 44, do you think you were pretty successful?
Yeah, apparently, according to my navigator, the poor pilot, he doesn't see too much, you know.
Right.
My navigator says, I think we hit it all right.
And, okay.
Who's going to tell you any different?
Yeah. Did you fly the next day?
I think it did. Yeah, on the 7th, another night operation. A railroad northwest of Falaise. Accurate like tracer over the channel. Well, we were told to go low level over the channel, just 1,500 feet or so. But when this tracer started coming up, we thought somebody forgot to tell somebody something. And Hank said, "What do you think, Skipper?" I said, "We're going up." So we went up to 8,000 or 10,000.
So you were maybe a squadron lead at that point?
How do you mean?
Well, were you leading the squadron that you could make the decision to go up to 8?
Oh, no, just my aircraft.
Just your aircraft.
Because we're solo, remember, on the night trips.
Oh, on the night trips you were solo. Okay.
No, I didn't get to. I got to lead the flight after, I think, about 36 trips. They gave me the flight to lead, and then another one after that, which I was thrilled. But the first time I led a flight, my number 3, I'm number 1, number 2, number 3 is flying over here on my port wing. He just peeled off. Never heard of him again. We never got back. You don't talk about some machines are missing. I always wondered. And then just a couple of years ago, in one of the magazines that's put out for the Tactical Air Force, there's this trip he was on, and there was a New Zealand pilot and crew, and they don't know what, something must have happened to the pilot, yes, because he ditched it in the English Channel. Down they went, and the story is that how they got out. One of them drowned. He couldn't get extricated or so. But 3 of them got in to the life raft. And the pilot got in and sat down in the seat and dropped dead. So he'd had a heart attack or something, I guess.
Mercy.
That was on my first lead and lost a man.
Wow. So you never really saw much fighter action.
No.
Luftwaffe was pretty well
Never saw
slowed down by that time, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, do you have any stories continuing after Normandy, or didn't you later on move into other airfields?
Well, as I say, after my tour was over, and I came back to the station, they'd all packed up and moved over to Brussels. And as I say, when we tried to do another tour, the Canadian Air Force, Canadian authorities just canceled all that out. And I said, they're going to give us a rest.
Okay.
So then I went to a flying instructor school.
So you've flown 49.5 missions in Europe at this point?
Yep.
And you've been recalled back to Canada?
Nope. No, they left me in England.
They left you in England?
I was
Okay.
there till VE Day.
Okay.
They're still there.
So they pulled you back to England, and what did they have you do?
Sent to a flying instructor school near Bristol, and there, we said, well, we've done all this flying. Now they're going to show us how to tell people to fly. Well, it's too true. You need that. It's all right to know these things, but how do you teach it to somebody else? And we learned a lot about this sort of thing there.
Mm-hmm.
I used it later on in my life, as a matter of fact, having an instructor's rating. And so they sent us back to one of the operational training units where I had trained originally. And there wasn't too much doing by then, it was getting late in 44 into 45. And we were more or less, we did flying guys that needed some formation training. A lot of gunners, we flew a lot of gunners out, and they did some air firing over the Bristol Channel and various places like that. And anytime somebody wanted to go somewhere, we were available with an airplane to take them.
Now, in your gunneries, some of the B-25s had extra machine guns mounted on hard points for low-level attacks. Were any of yours modified that way, or were you strictly just using them for fighter protection?
Gunners did tours and never fired the guns in anger. And of course, when you're in formation, you have to be careful where you're shooting and that. But there was never a chance to fire at a fighter because, as I say, because of their tactics.
Okay.
Down and out. So they had some great joyrides. Put it that way. Poor guys.
Okay, so you finish your training at this school, and then what happens?
Well, VE-Day came along.
Okay.
And we down to Bournemouth again to await a trip home. And by then, of course, they were asking for volunteers to go on this Tiger Force to Japan. And they say, you'll get home a lot quicker if you volunteer for that. So by then, my crew, of course, was gone home. I volunteered for it along with many others, and we got a quick trip back home. And while we were home in Canada, of course, war was over.
Okay.
That was it.
So what was the Tiger thing going to be, do you know? Or you hadn't gotten far enough to really know what you were going to be doing?
I had a posting to Greenwood, Nova Scotia in my possession there after I got a month's leave sort of thing, and a trip back to Greenwood. And they were flying, I believe, mosquitoes there. And we would have been a mosquito outfit then.
Okay.
I look forward to that because everybody enjoyed the mosquito.
Okay, so now you've gotten back home, and you're fixing to go back to train for the Tiger Squadron, but then VJ Day occurs. So did you get discharged at this point?
Yep,
or?
that was just about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the coming home after being gone in battle and all of what you'd gone through. Do you remember walking in the door?
Oh, yes. Yeah. The main thing is I didn't tell you when I was going through the prairies of my training, I met a girl.
Okay.
Like a lot of people did. And I hitchhiked from Edmonton down to Calgary. And there I was going to, my buddy and I, we wanted to see this famous Calgary Stampede.
Right.
But by God, it started to rain. And it rained and it rained. And I think they called off the Stampede or something. But I met this girl. And she invited me home for dinner and all that with her family. And she wasn't very old. I think she was 16 at the time or something. Heck, I was 19. What the heck? And we just got along great.
So this is before or after you got into battle?
Before.
Okay.
Yeah. And we wrote a lot. As a matter of fact, overseas, I think she sent me 300-odd letters. She numbered every one. And I don't know how many I wrote back to her, but quite a bit. So as soon as I came back home, I stopped at Calgary for a couple of days. We got together again, and I got engaged, by the way, before I went over. By word of mouth, I got engaged.
Well, that's a story waiting to be told. Can you share that one?
Well, the last night I was on my way back to Halifax to go overseas, and I said, you got to be here when I come back and all that. She says, yeah, I'll wait for you, just like that, And she was one beautiful girl. I forgot I got the prettiest one in Calgary. But I like to get her an engagement ring, so I called my sister back home. And she said, I'll get an engagement ring for you. And my brother, who had joined the Navy, said he was going to go through to Halifax on the train. He says, I'll drop it off for you then. So it happened my sister bought the ring, and my brother gave her the ring in Calgary, and I'm away off overseas by then.
But the important question is, did you ask the important question?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so at least you did that.
Oh, I did that myself before I left there. And we eventually, we got married to have 4 kids, 16 grandkids, and 6 great-grandkids now.
Mercy. And what's your wife's name?
Unfortunately, I lost Joan about 4 years ago to cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that. What was her name?
Joan.
And what was her maiden name?
Davis.
Okay.
The Davis family in Calgary is pretty well known. They're all pilots or something to do with the airport out there.
So tell me about walking in her front door after being gone for so long and seeing her.
Oh, I can't really explain that to you.
I can't imagine.
It was really great.
So did you bring her back home to Vancouver Island to meet your parents at that point?
I had sent her the money to go out there while I was overseas, to go out and beat them, my sister just squired her around for a week or two or whatever. And my folks, my dad said I brought up the cradle, but she had a great time.
So tell me about walking into your family's home for the first time after being gone.
Well, the party started by then, I guess.
Did they meet you at the train station, or did you walk in on them?
The ferry over to Vancouver Island, over to Nanaimo. And my mother did. My dad was away somewhere working. And my mother met me there, and sister, I guess. And it was just like coming home.
Yeah? A lot of big hugs going around and kisses.
Yeah. But then in the evenings, other fellas all coming back, my neighbors coming back, and other friends that I played golf with and all that coming back.
Had your brother gotten home? Because you had said earlier he was in the Navy.
Yes. And of course, another one I didn't mention is in the paratroops. My elder brother, he jumped on D-Day.
Okay.
I was over there flying. He flew over, but he stayed over there.
And everybody got home safe and sound?
Yeah, my young brother, he was on the aircraft carrier, Nabob. It got torpedoed, but they made it back into Scapa Flow in Scotland, and he was okay. My brother, the eldest brother, in the paratroops, as I say, they jumped. They landed in a swamp. They lost, I don't know how many of their outfit. And he eventually got shot through the face. He got a bullet through here and here, but they patched him up, and he was back over into France or whatever there afterwards.
Okay, so you're home now, and how long before you brought June and got married, or did you go back to Calgary to
We
get
got married in April the following year.
Okay.
Yeah, we waited a few months and got all organized, and for some reason or other she wanted April the 12th, I forget why, but that was it.
Okay. And so you got married, and how long did it take to have your first child?
About a year and a half. Wendy was born. Unfortunately, I lost Wendy too, just a couple of months ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So tell me the names of all your children.
Oh, well, the first one was Wendy, who was left, and then Linda, who was a nurse in Victoria, and Laurel, who is a school teacher in Revelstoke, BC. And we had to keep going. We had 3 girls in a row, but we kept going. We waited 5 years, and boy, we got our son.
Good.
He's of the same name. He's a great guy. I can't help saying that. He's the type of fellow that I wanted to come down to Palm Springs again. I said, but I'd sure like to have my car there, because I stuck my neck out and bought a Jaguar. He said, I'll bring the car down for you, Dad. I said, well, that's 3 days driving from Vancouver Island to get here comfortably. By God, he did. We flew down. He brought the car down. And we've enjoyed, I like to have my own car because we travel quite a bit when we're down here. Mm-hmm. And come Saturday, I'm heading back, and we're flying back. You'll be down on Thursday to take the car back.
So you arrived back on Vancouver Island. What did you do to start your life back again?
Well, I'm hot around for a little while there, selling and things like that. I always figured the guy should be a salesman because when I was a caddy, all those guys playing golf were salesmen. I thought they must make pretty good money, but I find out it didn't work too much. And with this flying experience, I thought, well, out here on the coast, they fly a lot of floats. And I went up to Port Alberni where they had a float flying course. And I took that course there, and then I heard that the big logging operator in Nanaimo wanted a pilot. He'd bought a beaver, and I said, what the devil's a beaver? And he got the first beaver to come out, I guess maybe the second beaver to come out on the coast of BC on floats in almost 1950, 51 or so when he got it. So I heard about that, and as soon as I finished this course, I got with him right away and got checked out on the beaver, and I stayed with him for about 10 years. But flying logging camps, fishing. He was a great sportsman. And so I found myself doing an awful lot of fishing and hunting and traveling around British Columbia. Mm-hmm. As far north as Watson Lake. I used to get into there for a few.
So when did you retire?
I retired about 25 years ago. And I ended up in the insurance business. When your pilot finishes flying, he's usually in real estate or insurance, and I dabbled in real estate quite a bit, but I was in the insurance business. Built a summer place, Nanoose Bay. The family pretty well raised there in the good months. Did lots of fishing and really a good life.
Excellent, excellent. So you come to the desert quite a bit? Down here in the Palm Springs area?
And my wife and I, we came down regular for 10 or 12 years, I guess, in Desert Hot Springs.
Do you like to play golf down here? Is that one of the main attractions?
Yes, I wish I could play more, but I got a new hip. It's not the best of success, I guess, but I'm getting around. I need a cart. I've had the old heart operation, I've had the hip operation, and I got diabetes and a few things, but to have it all, we're doing pretty good.
There you go. So, can you maybe put into words the impact of your time in the service and in actual combat, how it affected you and the rest of your life, and maybe how you viewed life? Did it have an impact in that regard, or?
I think it did, as an outlook on who you are and life. If I'd stayed in this small town, I guess all my life, it wouldn't have been the same. But flying and the Air Force really opened you up. I belong to the Air Force Association in Nanaimo, and the other flying thing I did is the Air Cadets. My son got old enough to get into Air Cadets. I said, "You go, I'll go in as instructor," and so I did. And next thing I know, they were looking for a fellow to take over the Air Cadets glider flying program. So I stepped right into that, and I was training tow pilots. We had your Cessna L-19s for tow planes, and I said, "How do we get a glider?" He said, "Well, you have to raise that money, and then when you get the glider, you donate it to the Air Cadets." So the association, plus others around BC, I asked them all to get together and get enough money to buy the glider. And so that was great. I was in my 50s then. I got my glider license and instructor's rating on that. Had a great time. We had to buy another glider, so I did the same thing, and we got ourselves another glider. And then we got everything all together in the Air Cadet organization. I stayed with it for about 5 years, and then I retired from it.
Well, kind of in closing, is there anything you'd like to say to your family that they've now probably seen this, and is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Oh boy, to the family. Well, I've got the greatest kids, and I think they know it. They all get along themselves, just great. They've got great grandkids. My eldest granddaughter, I guess, is 40 now, and they all get along fine. They're all doing well. They're pretty well all professionals. They're doing great. Their kids are great, and they're healthy. What more could you get?
What more can you ask for? Well, we sure appreciate you doing this with us and taking your time, Ken.
My pleasure. I appreciate this interview. Just
right.
waiting to see it.
All right, we'll get you a copy soon. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jeff.
There you go.
Oh,
Excellent.
my throat was just about leaving me there.
I figured you were starting to.
I'm sorry it wasn't more exciting, but
Oh, it was
that's where it
excellent.
was.
You know,